right into it. Do you want me to go right into the agenda, or do we have anyone else that we want to give time to? Because we had G's remarks, and then we were just gonna just go right into my remarks, right?
Yes, sir. Actually, why don't you, if you want to talk about what they can expect tonight, we're going to get some other members from Villagers for Trump Online in just a minute here.
Okay. What we're going to be talking about is guests give a perspective on what's going on with COVID, the current events that are going on, and then really focus in on what we can do to empower ourselves in the midst of what's going on and really understand the truth of what's going on versus a fiction of what's out there. So that's what we want to talk about today. So I know I can keep talking as people come in. Justin, is that what you want me to do?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Oh, good. Okay, so we're getting sound. That's good. I'm going to turn us off here. Yeah. So, so I think the fundamental issue is we want to talk about the issues that are going on. How what we're looking at is there's two interesting issues that have come up. One is the immune health of the individual in our country, as well as the economic health of people, and that how this entire situation right here in many ways is affecting both of them. And in my view, one individual by the name of Anthony Fauci is essentially directing health policy in a misguided way at the expense of economic health. And it's really a model that's being taken that's one size fits all. Justin, I can continue if you want.
Yes, please.
Okay.
I'm trying to get Mr. David G on and Jan on here with us as fast as I can.
Okay, great. So I know we have a number of people joining, but as people are coming on, I'll sort of review what's been going on. As you know, that this virus is essentially the coronavirus, to put it simply, has been around for many, many years. It's basically a coronavirus refers to a flu virus that's been around for many, many decades. There's been variations of this. One of the variations of this is called SARS, which is a version of this that came out about 10, 15 years ago. And that was when it had a very high mortality rate relative to this one, around 15, 20%, but a relatively low infectivity rate. What we mean by that is very few people got it, but when people got it, it had a higher fatality rate. Similarly, there was another variation of this called the Middle East respiratory syndrome, and that had an even higher fatality rate, around 40%, and again, less people got it. What's different here is this one appears to have a higher infectivity rate, but a much, much lower fatality rate. And the issue is we don't really know what the numerator and the denominator is. What I mean by that is we don't really know how many people are actually being characterized as COVID or coronavirus, because the tests themselves have issues. A lot of the hospitals are categorizing people as COVID, even though they don't test positive, but they appear to have some nebulous symptoms. But the key thing to understand is that most of the people who are getting this and have a fatal response are people typically who have pre-existing conditions, which means they have an issue with obesity, or they're diabetic, or they have AIDS, or they're smokers. Essentially, they already have a situation in their bodies that's already a weakened immune system. Very few people are dying, if any, particularly young, particularly at middle age. It's typically people who are much older. But the important thing is, even if people are older, the real question is, what do you do for your immune health? And that's what we wanted to talk about. What can you do to really support your immune health? And the unfortunate situations in the midst of this crisis, no one is really talking about that. So whether it's a coronavirus or whether it's any virus, ultimately one of the messages that we wanted to share is that it's not the virus. It's something very important to listen. It's not the virus that hurts and harms you. It's not the virus. It's actually your body's reaction to the virus. So if people are healthy and your body has the right nutrients and your immune system is strong, you will react in the sense you'll get some sniffles, you may get some aches and pains, and then your body learns how to produce the antibodies, and it goes on. So part of the thing is, what can we do to support the immune system? How are we doing, Justin? Are people coming on?
We're doing good. We're trying to get them on as they can join us. Nobody's come on yet, but they've all got the meeting information.
Oh, okay, great.
We're walking along.
All right. So those of you listening, I think the important thing to understand is what today we're going to really talk about is give a much more better understanding of what is a virus, what is immune health, and where should we really be focusing on. And my view is we should be really focusing on your immune health, which means your immune system, and understanding how you can support that. The other approach is we basically assume that an infectious disease like this is the end-all and be-all and there's nothing we can do about it, when that's frankly very far from the truth. The truth is that if you look at the history of many of these diseases, the medical establishment likes to always think everything is a bacterial issue, And I'll be right back. 1 second. Okay, we're getting on. 1 second.
All right. Also, thanks for your patience. We unfortunately had a little bit of an issue with trying to get the Zoom conference going. That Dr. Shiva was so nice to get going for us. And we are waiting for Mr. David G., the president the chairman of the board of Villagers for Trump, and Ms. Jan Morrow, who has all the legislative updates. And she's trying to get on right now. Oh boy, technology sure is fun. Nice for us to be able to do this. It's even nicer the way it's supposed to. So, but while Dr. Shiva is taking a break,
I'm right back. Yep, there you go.
On the Villagers for Trump page, where you went to connect to the YouTube link, there's a form on the side that simply asks for your name and your question. Okay, so if you have questions, go ahead and put them through, because those are going to come right to me.
How are you?
Hi, Jan.
So we have Jenny who's joined, Justin. We have Jan. Okay, great.
Back to the question. Listen, if you have a question you want to ask Dr. Shiva, please fill out the little form. It's going to come right to me. I'm going to filter all those questions, and Dr. Shiva can actually see them on the chat as we're going along. So whenever he gets to that point where it's time to ask questions, your questions will already be there ready for him to answer. So Dr. Shiva, you or Ms. Jan, if you have the agenda, if you want to carry on with the agenda, Jan, that would be great too.
Justin,
There we go. And I'll unmute people as I need. Okay, everyone's muted. Mute. Okay. All right. Can everyone hear me all right? Yes? Okay, so I think what I want to really talk about is putting this coronavirus into perspective. If that's what we want to talk about, let's talk about that. So how do we put this into perspective? So if you look at the timeline of this, and we go back about 6 months, what was taking place in the world? Well, first of all, there were massive protests in Hong Kong, if people remember, right? Huge protests taking place, millions of people. In Wuhan, where this virus was apparently found, 6 months before, in June and July, the Chinese people, citizens in Wuhan, were also protesting, tens of thousands on the street, because the Chinese government was trying to build one of the biggest incinerator plants there to pollute everyone. And the Chinese people did not want to get polluted. Now remember, in China, if you protest, you get thrown in jail. It's not like you have the First Amendment there. So people took a lot of risk there. If you look in Venezuela, there were protests. If you look in France, there were massive protests. South Africa, massive protests. 2 populist leaders got elected. One in the United States, Donald Trump, and the other one in India, Modi. Okay, so you had incredible amounts of anti-establishment activity taken globally. That's one event that it's so easy with the media to forget these things, right? We just forget all of this. But those were 2 or many, many events were taking place where people, bottoms up, working people wanted their own freedom and rights. All right, so that's one data point. The other thing that was taking place globally was people have realized that they want to take care of their health. People are looking for alternative ways to take care of their health, either eating better, exercising. People have recognized that pharmaceutical drugs are not something that they want to see as the only option to improve their health. in the midst of that, there was many, many movements taking place globally. In fact, in Italy, one of the biggest movements for anti-vaccines, okay? Movements here against vaccines. And this can't be forgotten. In fact, Italy had a very, very vibrant, massive number of people out on the streets protesting because they did not want people like the Gates Foundation, people like the CDC and the WHO or organizations like that mandating vaccines on people. That's the second point. The third point was the economy was one of the pillars that Donald Trump had in terms of talking about one of his big successes. And if you look at it, all those three things have evaporated with this, right? We have no more protests anywhere. No one even knows what happened to all the protesters in Hong Kong. They're just gone, right? There's nothing in France anymore. It's all disappeared in a very nice way for those in power. The economy, 10 million people filed for unemployment in March in the United States. So the economy is being devastated. And now you have Fauci getting ready to tell people that we need to mandate vaccines, okay? Meaning everyone needs a vaccine and the vaccine is always a cure. Does that make sense? So that's what's going on right now. So that has occurred literally in about 90 to 100 days. All right? So we need to keep that in perspective. And if you also keep in perspective, when you look at something like this, COVID, where let's say 10,000 people, 7,000, 10,000 people have died in the United States. I think it's 6,000, roughly 7,000. Well, you know, with H1N1 or the flu, nearly 60,000 people died. 60 million people got it, okay? So just look at those numbers. We did not shut down the entire United States economy because of that. Every year, nearly 640,000 people die of heart disease in the United States. All right? We're not shutting down the economy because of that. Nearly 550,000 people die of cancer, which is also a public health issue. We're not shutting down the entire country because of that. 440,000 people every year at minimum die because of medical errors, a third reason for death. Right after that, you have roughly about, this is being very, very conservative, 200,000 people die from prescription medicines. So if you add that 200,000 plus the 440, it's around 640, 700,000. That's more than heart disease. So yet, the people that claim that care about our public health so much, I haven't seen them taking the same effort to try to care about why people's arteries get clogged, or why people are getting cancer, or why there's medical errors. By the way, when it comes to prescription drugs, 1.9 million people get hospitalized every year from prescription drug failure. That's a lot of impact on the hospital system. Again, we don't see a public health issue caused there. However, when COVID comes and about 6,000 people die, and the people that are dying, and we want to be aware of this, are people who are immunocompromised, who have underlying conditions. Not to say that we should not be not compassionate, but it's a relatively it's a size of the American public which have compromised immune systems. And whether it's this virus or another virus, they're always susceptible to it. That's why 60,000 people died of the flu last year, okay? So I hope that gives you sort of the perspective. So what is the opportunity here for people who want to, frankly, in my view, take advantage of this? And the opportunity is that you have a president in power many of these people did not like. You have a people who are starting to dissent across the world, that people have an opportunity. All that dissent has disappeared. And then you also have the fact that pharmaceutical companies, and this is something everyone should listen to, pharmaceutical companies have been losing money. They're under a major financial crisis. Why? Because the pharmaceutical drugs, by the way, when I talk about a pharmaceutical drug, it's a chemical that doesn't occur in nature, okay? It's a drug that's manufactured, and it's a synthetic drug. Those drugs take about 13 to 15 years to go through the regulatory process and testing in test tubes, and then in animals, and then in humans. And it's about $3 to $5 billion for a company to actually, create a pharmaceutical drug that makes it through all those processes and then actually makes it out to the FDA. It's very expensive and high risk for them. Why? Because the drug that comes out, you and I can sue them if it doesn't work. However, when you look at pharmaceutical drugs, there's nowhere, vaccines, the regulations are far less, and no American can sue a pharmaceutical company in court if there's an error or if it hurts you. You have to go to what's called a vaccine court, which is under Health and Human Services. So what we're looking at is a fundamental way that the Constitution in many ways has been subverted to protect pharmaceutical companies. So pharmaceutical sales, they have a major problem in pharma drug. Their whole process doesn't work. They're looking for new avenues, and that new avenue is vaccines. Okay? And then when you step back even farther, you have to understand that pharmaceutical companies, their real weapon is marketing. Public relations, advertising. Every major mainstream media organization gets tons and tons of money. You just have to look at the primetime ads, right? They're all pharmaceutical ads. So they're not going to say anything against these guys. The politicians will not say anything against these people. Most of them get funding from big pharma or big hospitals or big medicine. So you have that dynamic that's taking place among the monetary interests that occurs. So if you have the pharmaceutical companies which own essentially media companies, they're not going to say really anything against pharmaceutical drugs. So, but we do know that pharmaceutical companies are very, very good at marketing. So right now, literally about 3 years ago, the World Health Organization, the United Nations, created their version of a utopia. And the utopia they put forward was called Sustainable Development Goals 3. You can look it up, SDG 3. And what that laid out was a utopia for the whole world. Obviously, the UN would be the central body running this in the World Health Organization. And it lays out a utopia which says there will be no more income inequality. We'll end all the poverty in the world. There'll be, complete sexual equality. We'll eliminate all sexes. There'll be, the world will be clean, etc., etc. They have 17 points. And they make it very clear in order to achieve those 17 goals of the Sustainable Development Goals, at least 14 to 15 of them will require, and listen carefully, vaccination of everyone on the planet. Okay? So they've presented this beautiful, it's very much like those 30-minute ads you see on primetime TV when a pharma ad comes out, some problem, and then the woman takes a drug and then suddenly she's in heaven, okay? The nice music plays and everything is solved in her life, right? That's the model here, a utopia. Now, the reason I say that is to achieve those 17 goals, they're saying we need to vaccinate everyone. And the supporters of this entire SDG 3 and the WHO's policy is an organization called the International Federation of Pharmaceutical Manufacturers. And by the way, this is all public information. And the heads of that organization essentially represent all the pharmaceutical manufacturers who are supporting those sustainable development goals, okay? So what better way than a pharmaceutical manufacturer saying, look, we want to end poverty, we want to end everything in the world, right? All horrible things. And by the way, in order to do that, you need to get vaccinated. Everyone needs to get vaccinated, okay? I hope this is making sense. Now, Anthony Fauci, the person who is advising the president, unfortunately, has been a part of Big Pharma for nearly 40 years. Okay? He's built his career off Big Pharma. He owns the career of many, many academics in the world. Okay? Because we have centralized science, we have centralized healthcare, we've pretty much centralized everything. We took away centralized innovation. Only a few people can innovate. You can be a dropout out of Harvard. You can be, out of Silicon Valley, MIT. Basically, and that's where, quote unquote, all the intelligence is. So we've removed the small innovators. We've destroyed science at a fundamental level because you have to be part of the fraternity to get funded, and you better keep your mouth. You better shut up your mouth if you really want to make it and be a professor, a tenured professor. So we've created this clique, a cabal of people who control science, who control innovation, and who control media. And this is all, by the way, just an unfortunate fact of where we live. So that set of institutions can overnight take anything, a narrative, and pummel it on people. And that's what we're seeing take place right in front of our eyes. So what do we need to do? Well, first thing is people need to get, first of all, I can't tell you don't be afraid, because fear is something very, very primal in human beings. What I can tell you is, let's look at what the reality is. Let's go to truth. You know, there was a time when some people believed that the sun went around the earth. Okay? And there was 97% of the people had the scientific consensus that was the case, except one guy who actually had data showing that was not true. And this has been something that's been remarkably recurrent in human history. So what I'm here to tell you is that the immune system is not a weakling. Your immune system, whether you want to believe in natural design from God or whether you want to believe in evolution, what I can tell you is the immune system is a very powerful subsystem of your body. In fact, it's the operating system of you. And that system can take on incredible amounts of hits. We have 380 trillion viruses within us. We have all sorts of stuff. Think about a fish in an aquarium. Okay, the water in that aquarium is viruses and microbes that we swim in. Every day, every moment, from the time we're born to the time we exit, okay? We are in a sea of microbes and bacteria and viruses, and the reason we exist is because our body has the intelligence to take on that virus, process it, and modulate the response and build what's called immunity to that, okay? That's what it's designed for. The only reason it doesn't do that is when we weaken the immune system. And when we weaken the immune system, your own body, and listen very carefully, your own body not only goes to try to attack that virus, but also as a part of that, if your body has a weakened and dysfunctional immune system, it'll actually attack parts of your own tissue and your cells. Okay? So this is a reality. It's not the virus that harms and kills you, because we're surrounded by them. Okay? We're surrounded by them. There's all sorts of microbes. I mean, you can clean as much as you want, but I'm sorry to tell you, unless you want to live in a little clean room, which we're not supposed to do, we're supposed to live with microbes, okay, and viruses. But what we do know is if your immune system is weakened, let's say you have 6 cylinders only running on 1 cylinder, that 1 cylinder tries to make up for the rest of the other 5, and it overreacts, okay? And that's what happens. And how do we weaken those other 5 cylinders? Well, we weaken it, well, I'll give you one thing, by eating sugars all day. If you eat a high sugar diet, your body creates fungus like candida and other things, and those things destroy 2 of your cylinders of your body. One is called the macrophages, or your T cells, okay, which create antibodies. So you basically actively destroy your immune system, okay, when you eat these high sugar diets. The second way is you don't get enough nutrients, okay, you don't get enough sunshine. 15-20 minutes a day, your body actually creates vitamin D. Why is vitamin D important? Because vitamin D is an antimicrobial, all right? Vitamin D, your body uses to create little bullets that can take out the membranes of these bacteria and the membranes of viruses, etc. All right? So the bottom line is vitamin D, which is the sun, is essential to your health. Now, if you can't get it from the sun in the winter times, that's why people typically eat the oily foods. The oily fish. I'm talking about the healthy sardines or the healthy mackerel or the healthy salmon. If you can get it from vegetables, it's a little bit harder. Alternatively, what people also do is they make sure they consume enough vegetables, dark fruits and vegetables. These give your body carotenoids, which your thyroid converts to vitamin A. Vitamin A literally protects your cellular walls, okay? The membranes around your cell. It creates nice scaffolding so viruses can't even get in. And all of this is very, very well documented, vitamin A and vitamin D. We can go through many things. But these are like the two pillars that people should use. Now you can layer in things to support your thyroid. Why do I say that? Because as you age, naturally your thyroid function starts going down, and you need to support that thyroid. So iodine and iodide are very good for that if you can get it from the seaweeds, okay? We took out a lot of iodine and iodide from our soils because of the way we did farming. And in fact, if you remember, Morton salt used to have iodide, right? Iodized salt. But the doctor scared us and said, don't eat salt, as though that was the reason that you got high blood pressure. So people stopped eating salt and they didn't get iodine and iodide. So the problem I think people need to understand is a medical doctor, they're nice people, they're victims of big pharmaceutical medical education. They don't learn anything I just told you. 99% of doctors cannot tell you that vitamin D creates these molecules called cathelicidins, which are those bullets that disrupt. They don't even know that. They didn't study it because they don't study nutrition, they don't study systems. 99% of MDs do not know why vitamin A is important to you. They don't study it. They don't study nutrition. What they do study is if this, give this drug. If this, give this drug. If this, do this medical procedure. Okay? They are basically, the unfortunate thing is MDs have been turned into robots. That they're 2 years of medical education. By the way, when they graduate, you know who comes to all their dinners? If you go to most MD's homes, you'll see all the tchotchkes, this mug from this pharmaceutical company, this mouse pad from this pharmaceutical company, etc. It's a pharmaceutical-based education model. It's not a model that is for health and well-being. It's not about prevention. So we give a lot of value, right? Stanley's just joining. We give a lot of incredible value to the medical doctor. We've been brought up on that, right? Marcus Welby, right? The white jacket, etc., right? It's ingrained into us. But the unfortunate reality is most MDs, I would say 99%, know very little about health and nutrition. So I'll give you an example. When scurvy came, remember scurvy? By the way, this goes back over the 200 years of Western medicine. When scurvy came, people thought, oh, it's a hygiene of the sailors, right? There's some microbe being passed. And for hundreds of years, they thought it was, even though they had evidence lime and lemons helped, but the scientists were pounding on, it's got to be a microbe, it's got to be a bacteria, it's got to be some virus. Well, finally, when they isolated vitamin C, they realized it's vitamin C. It's a deficiency, right? No one talks about scurvy anymore. It's vitamin C. Pellagra, which was another disease that people got, they got awful, it was like basically eczema on steroids, right? People's skin started deteriorating, etc. Well, they used to quarantine people, okay? They used to tell people this is some pandemic, okay? Until a very interesting doctor by the name of Goldberger, went into the asylums and he saw, wait a minute, the doctors and the nurses, they're absolutely healthy. But the workers and the farmers there who were around there were getting it. Why? Because they were eating purely a corn diet, okay? And the corn has no vitamin B1 in it, okay? I'm sorry, niacin, all right? No niacin. So that's where pellagra came from. And then people started saying, well, you have to eat fruits, you have to eat vegetables and meats and etc. You have to get your niacin, all right? Very, very simple. But for 100 years, they said it was an infectious disease. Then you go to beriberi, another disease, right, which causes paralysis. Same thing. Then people found out it was lack of thiamine, okay? Then we started fortifying, the polished white breads with thiamine. This has been the history. That's about 100-year-old history, but things haven't changed. The entire medical system is about finding a virus, finding a microbe, and associating that microbe to this disease and scaring, frankly, everyone. Because it's a microbe. Basically, everything is a nail, and the only solution to a nail is a hammer, okay? Which means everything must have an infectious disease. I'll give you an example. Legionnaire's disease in the 1970s when I was in high school, 1976, remember the bicentennial? There's a big bicentennial celebration at, I think, a hospital, at a hotel, and about 26 people died, and people said this must be a microbe. So they made up this thing. They said, oh, it's this bacteria that was in the AC units of the hotel, okay? And that's why these people died. Well, it turns out that bacteria is everywhere, okay? The reason those people died, first of all, they were very elderly people, and they basically got sloshed, okay? Meaning massive drinking, okay? That's what did it. They compromised their immune systems. It had nothing to do with the bacteria. And I can even go and talk about HIV and AIDS, which is what Fauci was involved in. This is Anthony Fauci's second or third rodeo. The entire history of the medical establishment has become to centralize authority. The NIH basically controls the lives of most academics in the biological sciences. If you don't fall in line and you don't believe that everything is about infectious disease, you're probably going to be you're never going to get tenure in any major institution. Anthony Fauci, directly or indirectly, controls pretty much most of the livelihoods of most biological scientists in this country. That's why they're all zipped up about discussing anything about what I'm talking about. Fortunately, I got lucky, or fortunate, I worked hard, but because of this country, I went to MIT, got 4 degrees from there, started a bunch of companies. My PhD is in this field, and I'm recognized as an authority on the immune system and personalized and precision medicine. But I also know the corruption of academia. And that's what we're witnessing. And unfortunately, the president around him has people who cannot talk to this, and those people who can talk to this won't. That's the situation right now. So where we are right now is fear-mongering everyone, and there's an agenda: crash the United States economy. And who does this serve? By the way, the elites in the world do not care about you or our country. They're in their own world. We're talking about people who are far beyond billionaires. We're talking about trillionaires. And these people have come together. And in my view, it's the Chinese. It includes the WHO, which, by the way, formerly had a member of the Chinese Communist Party who was head of it, and another guy sympathetic to the Chinese Communist Party, this guy Tedros. You have the CDC, which has funded the Chinese. Our CDC has funded, our NIH, has funded the Chinese Center for Disease Control. Okay, you have to wonder why. You have the CDC. If you look at the directorate, they rotate between pharma. You have the Gates Foundation, the Zuckerbergs, and you have Hillary Clinton. And by the way, all of these people do not like Trump, okay? It's a different question, but I don't think anyone really likes the President of the United States. So you have a confluence of people coming together, and let's not forget, they attempted to take out the President of the United States on Russian collusion. That failed. Then they tried impeachment. That failed. They do not want Donald J. Trump to be the president in 2020 and beyond. They never thought he was going to win 2016, okay? And they surely don't want a guy like me winning a U.S. Senate seat in Massachusetts, okay? So for that matter, probably any anti-establishment candidates in this country. So you know what this COVID has done? It's created a very nice situation. It's hard to get ballot signatures. It's essentially for the incumbents. So what can we do? Number one, we need to understand that the body is a system, okay? It's actually we can do a lot of things if we want to get over our fear and are willing to empower ourselves to recognize that the human body is quite resilient, okay? We're not weaklings. But we need to support our body. We need to recognize the ankle bone's connected to the foot bone, okay? That means the body is an integrated system. You can't do something to your gut, which is eat horribly, and think you're going to be fine. You can't not get enough sunshine and think you're going to be fine. You can't deplete your body of vitamin A. So first is you need to recognize we're a whole system, and let's feed the body the right things. In my letter to the president, I said one is, take the really high-risk people and give them high-dosage vitamin D and high-dosage vitamin A. And all of us should get back to work, frankly. We should give people, some basic, if you can't get out in the sun, 5 to 10,000 IUs of vitamin D, about 10,000 IUs, this is for adults, by the way, vitamin A, about 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C. Make sure your iodine levels are in good shape and go to work, okay? The human body can handle this. So that's, I think, one of the most important things we need to understand is that we need to wake up to understand that the body is resilient. It's not the virus destroys us. It's our own weakened, dysfunctional immune system, okay? So that's the good news. It's not there's some creature coming to attack us, okay? If you look at the first 87 AIDS patients who got AIDS, okay? The big hype that was promoted was this virus called HIV destroys the immune system. It's absolutely one of the biggest lies, and Anthony Fauci was behind that. The truth is that if you look at those first 87 AIDS patients, you actually look at them, 90% of them were gays who were using poppers. These were pills that prolong orgasms, okay? And there's been 200 papers written that these poppers called amyl nitrates destroy your immune system. And at that time, people were having, sex with around 1,500 different people, one person, and taking massive amounts of poppers. That destroyed these people's immune systems. Now, when your immune system gets destroyed, you have all sorts of viruses in you. The second group of people were getting blood transfusions. Well, it wasn't that the blood was tainted, okay? It was the fact that if you get a blood transfusion from somebody, they give you immunosuppressive drugs, suppress the immune system so that blood doesn't hurt you. If you get for example, two transfusions, you probably have to go to the ICU. Your body's immune system is so suppressed. And the third group was people who were massive drug addicts, okay? Now, if you spoke about this, they created the other alternative that you were politically incorrect. So they covered themselves in a very powerful way. So what you ended up doing was you ended up hiding the fundamental issue. People were living, in many ways, not good lifestyles, and they suppress their immune systems massively. And that was never brought out in the press, and we created this thing called the AIDS epidemic. And by the way, now if you notice, they say AIDS-related diseases because they know it was total nonsense. All right? Anthony Fauci was behind that. So we are in a condition in this country where we have created a bunch of educated elites, vulnerable elites, who get their degrees, but they really don't know a lot. We've created a set of MDs who basically are robots, and it's not their fault, by the pharmaceutical education model. So if this, then this. If this, they don't think anymore. In fact, that's what's happened with science. There was a time in science where you had people would sit back and they would say, wow, why does that apple fall from the tree? They weren't there gathering data all the time. Wow, why does the speed of light work that way? Thoughtful questioning of the universe. And that's where innovation came from, in discoveries. Or from a 14-year-old kid in Newark, New Jersey, who built the first email system. And what bothers him about that is it didn't occur in the establishment centers. It occurred in Newark, New Jersey. By the way, that's where all great innovations come from everyday people. That's a history of the American dream. But they have said that you must go to these institutions of power, and then you find the solution. That's where the Wizard of Oz is, right? You must go to the wizard. And that's what they've created. They've created a fiction of where innovation comes from healing comes from, etc. And that's what we're watching right before our eyes. And the decision is, do you, as a human being, want to be a human being? Or do you want to be a robot? That's what this is about. The goal here is they want to make all of us robots and automatons. So we become a part of an industrial world where we are just tools, and maybe tools that are needed one day and not needed another day. Okay? And
Dr. Shiva, the question on the side of the screen there.
Yep.
Actually, I had a question for you too, though.
I can see that. Yep, I can see the chats. You want me to go through them? Okay.
Yes, if you'd like, go ahead.
First question is, let me go up from PG Schaefer. I just watched a video by a physician in St. Louis who said to take either quinine or drink 3 to 4 ounce tonic water daily as a preventative along with 100 milligrams of zinc daily. What are your thoughts about that? Look, quinine, there's many solutions, by the way, okay? Quinine is it's an anti-parasitic, okay? People have used it for years. Indigenous people used to take the bark of the tree, okay? We didn't need Bill Gates to go help the poor people in Africa with malaria, okay? I'm sorry. It's a very, very paternalistic model, okay? As though he is a savior of the world. But yeah, so quinine, zinc, both of these things are very valuable because one is a thing that essentially, it's an antibacterial, anti-malarial, okay? Tonic, and as well as zinc. Both of these things support the body a lot. Look, when I propose vitamin D and A, I could layer in a lot of things, but D and A are not just vitamins, they're hormones. They control so many processes in your body. I mean, thousands of molecular reactions. So you can hit zinc. I mean, all of these things are very positive. You should take them, but you know, there's only so much we can talk about. But they are preventative. Tonic water, quinine is very, very. It's a good thing. By the way, in most cultures, people did some type of cleanses when the seasons changed, because that's when they had to get ready because they know changes were coming. So when I grew up, and I still do this, that I'll do a certain type of cleanse, okay? And this is basically you're reducing the viral load on your body, okay? Next question: what can Trump do to overrule Fauci without starting a firestorm? The MSM will go full bore. What Trump needs to do is he needs to look. The videos I've been doing have been going viral all over the world, and the reason is because working people like ourselves on this call, actually have common sense. Okay, we know something's wrong. Okay, we know something doesn't smell right. We may not know why, but we know something doesn't smell right, and that's. God bless the people who actually work with their hands and actually solve problems, because we have a common sense versus people who go study, I don't know, a class on aardvark psychology or something, okay? These people or get a law degree, okay? Lawyers and lobbyists create fiction and they create lies, they manipulate people. But people who work with their hands, a nurse, a doctor, a small business person, you know, or an engineer or a plumber, I don't know about doctors, but the plumbers and the electricians, people who run a small business, we actually have to deal with reality, the nuts and bolts. I got to get a customer. I got to make sure they're good, right? We have to deal with reality. Many of these people don't have to deal with reality, so something doesn't smell right here. Wait a minute, 60,000 people died with a flu, 6,000, why are we shutting everything down? So what can Trump do? What Trump, I think, you know, I don't know, I never voted in my life. The first time I voted for everyone was for Donald Trump, because I saw him being a disruptor in a good way, going after the establishment of both parties. And they both hated him for that. And so what we see right now is, like I mentioned, the impeachment didn't work in the Russia collusion, but on this issue, he needs someone like me to support him, okay? Or he needs someone like myself or to recognize that Fauci is Pharma Fauci. He has an agenda. And he should be indicted. He should be fired. What this guy has done is criminal to health policy in this country. And the problem is all the academics, they're zipped up and they know what I'm saying is true. But they're in there doing their little research project. You know, I have two of them who live right next door to me. They're not going to say anything because they have their homes, they have their kids in college, they have their prestige, they have their ego. Most of the academics are egomaniacs if you've met them, right? So it's an unfortunate situation. That's why, you know, I go direct, you know, and it's working. You know, we've reached, I mean, we don't have Botox here. We don't have, you know, a nice studio here, but it's basically the truth we're saying. And the truth just resonates. So, and the good thing is Easter's coming. Where does one get 400,000 IUs of vitamin A? Can't take that many pills one at a time. Yeah, if you look online, there are certain providers that you can get that from. By the way, that is if you take that for 2 days only, okay? And you should talk to your. By the way, that you can look online. This is not. I'm not making any money off this, but this is well researched. That's a pediatric dose that they used to give to kids when they had measles to shorten all the symptoms. So you gave some firepower. But if you look online, you'll see, just go look on high dosage vitamin A, you'll see that. And if you're getting vitamin A, my suggestion, if I were you, I'd get vitamin A palmitate, okay? Which is a much more usable form. And vitamin D, you should get D3, 3 as in the number 3, D as in David, because that's a much more absorbable form to your body. Is there, is there more than one way to get tested? Is that tested for vitamin D or tested for this virus? I'm not sure about that one.
That was a separate question regarding the virus, Dr. Shiva.
Yeah, so there are various tests out there. The problem is many of these tests, right, they're looking for a piece of the viral body which could have existed, and you maybe got the antibodies and it's gone. The real issue is, do you have the antibodies, okay? Because you have the antibodies, you're fine, right? We have trillions of antibodies in our body. We've experienced all these viruses and your body just creates antibodies, right? And you don't even think about it. So the issue would be, do we have the antibodies? But let me tell you this, even in the, separate from the Spanish flu, which we can talk about, but any other pandemic or epidemic we had in the United States, only 15% of the population ever got it, okay? I mean, H1N1, 17% of the people got it in this country, right? So why is that? Why doesn't everyone get it, right? It's not everyone gets this, okay? Because we are all different. Our bodies know how to manage things in a very different way. So let's assume 30% of the people get it in the United States, okay? That would mean 90 million people. By the way, in other flus, right, it was typically 0.3% of the people died, okay? Let's double that to 0.6%. So 0.6% of, let's say, 90,000 people. So doubling the number of people get infected, 30%, 90,000 people. And let's say we double the number of fatality rates from the other flus, 0.6%. Well, what is that going to be? That's going to be, in a worst case, perhaps 540,000 people die, okay? Worst case, okay? Well, that's about the number of how many people die of cancer, to put this in perspective. So if that many people died, and if we're going to set that as a norm for shutting down the country, then we should probably shut down the country for heart disease and cancer while we're at it, if we want to make a point. Because maybe if we did that, people would realize what is actually going on, and people would realize there's diet and food and diet and food and diet and food and diet and food and clean air, clean water, clean food, right? We have dirty water, dirty air, dirty food. The Paris Accords allows China to double their pollution from 11 billion metric tons to 22 million carbon metric tons. So we have more, and pollution is what we want to bring down, right? So we have water, our water is polluted, right? With all the glyphosate and the atrazine. I don't see a public health emergency being called for that. What we have is we have big pharma, big agriculture, big hospitals, big academia, who all profits from sickness. That's what they do. They profit from sickness. And so that's what people need to get into their heads, that they are profiting from you being sick. And once you understand that, you can realize they have no interest in actually you being well. Don't think they do. And they profit from sickness. They profit from making everything a nail and everything a hammer. So everything is always an infectious disease. And if there is some flu, hype the hell out of it, excuse my language, hype it up so much that you are now ready to give up your rights as a thinking human being to realize this foundational principle that your immune system is what you need to protect. It's our operating system, you know? Any other questions? Let's see.
That was it. Thank you, Dr. Shiva.
How are we
Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Jan.
Okay, that's great. Dr. Shiva, I don't know if in the beginning, because we had a little bit of technical difficulty, were you able to give people a little insight into what you do right now in terms of precision medicine?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
By the way, are there viewers, Justin, on YouTube?
Yes, sir. There sure are.
Oh, okay, great. So, are they people in general who have a technical background? Do we have any understanding? Just out of curiosity, or
I just see
older audience, younger audience, just to get an idea.
I don't have the demographics in front of me.
Oh, that's fine. But the reason I think you asked that question, Jen, what I do is I'm considered one of the experts in the world on the immune system, but also on precision and personalized medicine. So what is that? So I run 3 different organizations. I've been involved in health since I was a 14-year-old kid doing medical research. I was a full-time research fellow at Rutgers Medical School, doing research on why babies were dying in their sleep. And I'm talking about actually, no one ever treated me any differently. I work with people 30, 40, 50 years older. But I've been doing this for a long time. But one of the important areas to understand is that everyone's bodies who's listening is a different body. We're all unique. We all come from different genetic backgrounds. We all come from different epigenetic backgrounds where we live. And we all face different stresses. And it turns out that the future of medicine, or in fact, the future of medicine, almost we're going back to the future. Traditional cultures knew this. It was called personalized or precision medicine. The simple way to think about it is, 6 words: the right medicine for the right person at the right time. Okay? So what's good for an Olympic athlete, Michael Phelps needs 10,000 calories. If the average person ate 10,000 calories with a lot of carbs, you'd probably get obese. Okay? On the other hand, some people need more exercise than others, right? Some people need less exercise. Some people are hurt. My point is, everyone's bodies is a different system. So one of the areas that I've been very interested in is understanding the body as a system, but more importantly, educating people. So I created a whole institute called Systems Health, and I have a tool called Your Body, Your System. I'm running for U.S. Senate. If people, I hate taking something for nothing. When people donate to our campaign, I actually give them a book, which is called System and Revolution. It teaches you principles of all systems, and then I also give you a tool that I built with my own hands. It's a software tool where you can understand how your body is a system, how different inputs affect your body's passage to health or not. But it's called Be Happy, Be You. Okay, very simple. Recognizing your body as a system. So that's systemshealth.com. If you go to the other thing I do is I also created a technology that came out of my MIT PhD work where I can literally take a disease and mathematically use a computer to understand the chemical reactions of that disease, and then figure out how different things that you eat or you consume can positively or negatively affect you. The reason this is powerful is that you don't have to go kill animals. We don't have to wait 20 years. You're using the computer to understand, predict what could happen. No different than when we build airplanes. We don't throw pilots in airplanes anymore and say, take a test flight and kill them. We basically do all of the stuff on the computer, right? We test all the possible designs, and then we say, oh, this is a good design, and then we go build that. So that's the technology I've created called Cytosolve. But these technologies are really about helping people figure out the right medicine for the right person at the right time.
So, Dr. Shiva, there is another question. Will you check that?
Mm-hmm. If Fauci's misleading us, why did VP Pence Trump hired him? Take double dose of multivitamins A through Z would help. Question: any confirmed studies that show asymptomatic people really are contagious or not? Or is this hype? Okay, so there's a bunch of questions here, right? This is from Justin, is it? Peterson. Oh, it's from you, Justin. Okay.
It's not my question. It's
okay.
actually from
from people. Oh, okay. So look. How did Fauci make it through 4 presidents or 5 presidents? Okay, he's been there for a long time. And the reason is that the immune system is a very complex system. And if you look historically, people have had the boogeyman, right? People who, in the Indian system, this is probably the best way to understand this. We have a thing called a caste system, okay? And the caste system is there are certain people on top who are called the priesthood, the Brahmins. They were the people who knew knowledge, quote unquote, of the gods, okay? They were the scribes who wrote stuff, e.g. the scientists of that time. Well, you know what? They were on the top. It wasn't the kings. It was them. And they, below them in the caste system, were the kings, today's politicians, okay? And below them were the warriors, the people who they sent to war. And below them were the business folks. And below them were the rest of the working people. Okay? So we were considered Shudras. Sudras when I go up in India. So the fact that I even made it to the United States is quite, it's just 1 in a trillion. Okay? Now, if you look at Fauci, what is he? He is the priesthood, quote unquote the priesthood. Okay? Who advises the kings. Kings have come and gone, right? Reagan, G.W. Bush, the other Bush, Obama, Clinton, and now Trump. So why is that? How has this guy been able to survive? It's no different than the Kissingers, right? the academics again, the quote-unquote the counselors, the Zbigniew Brzezinskis. Isn't it interesting that we don't elect these people, but they're always there? So who do they actually serve? So to me, it seems like I never elected Fauci, yet he is deciding the health policy in a critical time of this country. This is why we need people in government who actually are plumbers and electricians and farmers and scientists, real scientists and engineers who actually know stuff. That's who the founders of this country were. The founders were people like Washington, who actually knew what sine and cosine and tangent meant. He was a survey. He knew trigonometry. He knew physics, right? He knew business. He knew when to plant. Jefferson was an architect, and Franklin was everything. Printer, engineer, everything. Who do we have now? I'm sorry, with all due respect, but what is Mike Pence's credentials to assess what Fauci is saying true or not? Who are the people that are protecting Donald Trump right now and watching his back? Who are they? Big pharma guys? Right? That's what's going on. We have a situation in this country that we as people have elected people who have no skills except the skill to manipulate and lie and cheat. That's why we're in this situation. That's why in a crisis, it now matters, do we have people who are truly disinterested third parties, and do they have other jobs? Do they have another job that they can go to? 60%, 70% of Congress is lawyers. What do they do? They're the only profession, they force you to pay them, and they never have to deliver anything. Give me a $10,000 retainer. No other profession in the world does that. No other profession gets away with that. You get sued if you're a plumber and you don't fix something, right? Or I'm a software person, I don't deliver something. They're the only profession. They say, well, you got to give me a retainer. Well, do you think you'll win the case? I have no idea. I can't help you with that, right? That is what we've created. We've created a culture of lawyer lobbyists. And those people are the ones who surround the President of the United States. We've created bureaucrats. We've created academics who don't do science. We're in a very dangerous situation with a guy like Fauci. And that's why I think we put out a Fire Fauci. I don't know if you saw that. It went viral. Did you guys see this? We put out a petition to fire Fauci. I'll bring it up. It's gone viral all over the internet. Twitter got so upset they shut me down for a day. Okay?
Put you in Twitter jail, huh?
What's that?
They put you in Twitter jail?
Yeah, but it makes no sense. But if I can tell you right now, we put this, I think you can see this here. If I can put that up there. Okay? It basically says, I don't know if I can bring it right there. The light is too much. Maybe
Up
there.
a little bit. You move it up a little bit? Huh.
There.
A little hard to, oh yeah.
Okay? And if you look here, you can see that we put this up literally one day ago, and nearly 14,000 people have signed this petition. Okay? Nearly 300 to 400 doctors. People are not stupid. People are not stupid, but Fauci has gotten away with it because no one's ever exposed him and challenged him. No one with at least credentials like I do, with all humility. Most of the people with credentials like mine, they shut their mouth up. They don't question any of this because I think they've forgotten what it means to be a human being. The next question is, taking double dose of multivitamins A through Z would help. Look, multivitamins are good. You have to look at the quality of them, but ultimately we have to go to food and very simple things. If you can get out in the sun 15 to 20 minutes, that's why it's amazing that they're quarantining us. It's like basically disarming us. This is like you're violating the Second Amendment of the human body, because the vitamin D is like the gun, and the body produces these things called cathelicidins, which are bullets. So when you tell people to quarantine and stay home and don't go out, you're basically telling them to disarm your body's fundamental ability to protect itself against microbes. Any confirmed studies that show asymptomatic people really are contagious or not, or is this hype? Look, I as long as we play on their battleground and how we think about this, we're always going to be playing on their battleground. And I keep coming back to this central issue. And I hope people get this. It's about immune health. It's about supporting your immune system. If you have a strong immune system, none of this matters. They've created this weird world, okay? Talking about asymptomatic, non-symptomatic, contagious. This, I mean, they're living in their own little world, and they draw us into that, and now you're on their battleground. How about we go over to the truthful battleground, which is, you know what? Most of the people who have issues, health and disease issues, is their immune system is compromised. It's your operating system. If you're using iOS, okay, or Android, whatever, that's your operating system. If you don't upgrade it for 10 years, okay, none of the apps are going to work on it, right? None of the applications will work. Well, you have to make sure your operating system is up to date, or the things above it are not going to work, right? Your eyesight's going to go, your heart's going to go, your lungs are going to... These are diseases, which are manifestations. All disease is fundamentally one disease, ultimately, okay? And this the ancients always knew. It's all disease is one disease, and all disease has the same solution. It's always food, 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 food. Food is medicine. Hippocrates said it. But we have been bamboozled by these people through brainwashing, constant brainwashing by big pharma, big advertising. And by the way, Hollywood and academics work close together, right? They're one unit. They're all paid off. And by the way, all the AMC theaters in the United States are owned by the Chinese. I hope people know that. The biggest Chinese warlord owns every AMC theater. And you'll never see a movie come out against Hollywood. Think about it. I mean, against Chinese. Against the China government in Hollywood. Ever. Our entire culture, the way it's headed, our entire political economy is going to become a colony of China. And I'm not saying this in a xenophobic way. I'm saying this from a very observant way, that the entire Communist Party Chinese model is top-down control, okay? They're people they treat like dirt, they're people they treat like machines, and that's what's being exported to America. Made in China means we're exporting a model of healthcare, which is everyone should be vaccinated. Everyone should follow this way. Everyone, by the way, most of Wells Fargo, if you look at Wells Fargo, they always underbid on lending, mortgages. Well, they're, most of their, in fact, if not all, the major investor is Chinese. So you crash the economy, people lose their homes, and everyone's going to be renting from China. So people need to wake up. The American people are very good people. We're frankly very innocent. And people have lost, you can't be sheep, Someone once said, we come into this world as doves, the goal is to leave as eagles. Right? We can't be not vigilant. And that's what's happening. And the dumbest people are the most educated people, the vulnerable elites. The good news is at least 51% of people who voted for Trump were working class people. They're not stupid. That's why it's still a popular democracy, still good.
Doctor,
yep.
This is Stan Swice. I'm the elections director for the Villagers for Trump.
Hi, Stan. How are you?
Fine. I couldn't figure out how to put my picture up there, but
oh, you just hit the video.
Thank you for what you're doing. I firmly believe everything that you've said. I've done a lot of research on this ever since I read the book "The World Is Flat," the guy that predicted the Chinese want to be the next Roman Empire. How do you feel about the fact that 6 days ago CNN reported that North Korea has no cases and Russia has very little cases? Do you think there's a possibility that they had a vaccine for this and shared it with their comrades? Because those are the two countries that are comrades of China.
Yeah, it's possible. Let's think about this, okay? So, I don't know what the Chinese. Let's go to sort of the same principles. So I think people in China, there were people. I think Russia had about 3 or 10 cases. Do you remember?
I can't remember the figures, but I know CNN reported that North Korea had no cases as of 6 days ago. And that's CNN, so...
Right. So, look, that's why we need to start looking at this when, I had a very good mentor when I was growing up, he said, look, when things don't make sense, like you just use your common sense, things don't make sense, there's another agenda. So that's sort of the principle I've been successful in business and, in whatever I've done, because I'll always go with my gut instinct. Wait a minute, that's not adding up. What that person just told me, or the way they're behaving, everyone's experienced this, right? Someone says this and they do this and they act a different way. When things don't add up, there's another agenda. And so what you're sharing fits in with that, right? It fits
Yes.
in with, there's another agenda here. In fact, they haven't even found patient zero, as I understand. So we don't even know if this occurred in the Wuhan market. In fact, there are some studies, which I haven't had the chance to go corroborate, is that the virus strain in Wuhan is very different than in Iran and very different than in Italy. And by the way, Italy, you got to understand, the entire healthcare system is so horrible there. Go look at how many people died, I think last year, 2 years ago, I think it was 20 to 40,000 people, okay, in Italy. You don't want to get, friends of mine, I used to work with an Italian researcher at MIT, he said, look, you don't want to go into an Italian hospital. You don't want to end up there, okay? Now, 40% of the people are people over the age of 65. They're coming with chest pains, boom, COVID, okay? So the books are being cooked on this. You have Fauci heading it up here. This is an international elite. This is not some small players. This is a global international elite who do not want an anti-establishment candidate like Donald Trump in power. They surely don't want to see him there for 4 more years, Stanley. They definitely don't. This would be their worst nightmare. And then you have a nut like Joe Biden being prepped for this. And if you look at him, he has such deep, deep ties to all of this. And they don't want any of his stuff with this FISA stuff and all the stuff that's going on coming out, because it's going to basically blow up everyone. Every of these major politicians in there, Nancy Pelosi, Romney's, every one of them. This is how they continue their cabal, and their kids who frankly never have to work. They don't have to earn anything. The Kennedys, all of them. The modern day Kennedys. The modern day Kerrys. All of them are corrupt. They think that once they get into government, it's their government. It's their inheritance. By the way, I'm running for Senate here as a Republican. The GOP establishment and the Democrat establishment are running 3 lawyers against me. And when I first ran, it was going to be me against Ed Markey. They knew I would have destroyed him and won, so they ran Joe Kennedy against him, who's a $51 million trust fund kid. And now they're running a GOP establishment rhino, a Romney rhino. So we have to win in Massachusetts, because that's what, I'll watch the back of the President of the United States. And I've already been doing that in everything I've been doing. But the bottom line is that the American people, look, I came from India. My parents came with nothing. They're amazing people. But one thing is they're very good people, in some ways too good, too innocent. And that's what's happened. The people of the United States have been lulled into an innocence.
So, Dr. Shiva, to recap this, the key to health is the food you're eating.
Food is medicine.
Yes. And some of the foods that you ate, coming from India, we don't typically eat that, and we don't look at our spices as being medicine. Could you just very quickly talk about, very, very quickly?
Yeah, so very quickly, food is medicine. That's the number 1 takeaway. Number 2, these spices, like in India, they have a thing called curry powder, okay? Well, curry powder was, in my view, it's basically a medicine. You always include curry powder. What's in curry powder is a mixture. It's a medicinal mixture of a lot of different spices, which are potent. Turmeric, which is a yellow thing, the yellow spice, which is amazing anti-inflammatory. Amazing anti-inflammatory. Cloves, antibacterial, right? Cardamom, right? Helps your body, your heart, and many, many things in many ways, right? Anise. You have ginger, onions, garlic. And all of these things, you always include them. You're not eating them in a pill form. You're including them in the diet. And there's amazing recipes. It's great tasting food. So they figured out a way to mix art and information science. That's what medicine is. So cooking is an art form, and you're taking all this very powerful nutrients in. But one of the things that I think, even in this country, you know, many of these, if you look at the founders, they lived pretty old, 80, 90, right? People lived old because they were eating food that had lots of minerals, right? In the soil. Minerals are one of the powerful things we need. So I would suggest, if people want to think about this, you really want to go to sunshine, you know, go to the green, deep green vegetables and the deep, colorful fruits, okay? Less sugar. Let's just start there. If people just go at that, they're almost like 90% of the way there. And then if you're going to eat the meats and the fish, make sure you have enough fatty acids in them. And the last thing is probably stay away from these refined oils. They're horrible, okay? Meaning if you're going to get olive oil, right? It's a good oil. You should never cook with it, okay? The oils go rancid very quickly, the trans fats, and they cause all sorts of disruptions inside your body. You know, in old times when the people got a seed, Jan, they would grind the oil right then and there and use it. Oils go bad very quickly. They go rancid extremely fast. They're not good for your bodies. You're better off. In old days, they used, you know, tallow, or they used the ghee, you know, the clarified butter. These are much more healthier. But there's some very, very basic things people can do. And that's why I created this tool called Systems Health, to teach people what their body is and what supports them.
That sounds fantastic. I really appreciate your time and in educating everybody, and I hope people can walk away with feeling a little bit more confident. Plus, you've given us the political side of this plandemic. I call it a plandemic. It's been planned. They're scaring us, but we want to feel confident that we are not going to get this virus, because we know that some people are dying. That's a reality, and it's not good. But we also know that there are certain drugs out right now, like hydroxychloroquine, combined with zinc, is a cure-all, and they're withholding it. And just today, I saw a Twitter from one of the guys in New Jersey. It's not Pinocchio, it's Panicino or something like that. He's a state senator, and he said, we have got to release this to the physicians to be able to utilize, because we have drug companies right now. For instance, Bayer donated 30 million doses. Novartis is donating 130 million doses, donating it to this global issue, and people can't seem to get their hands on it. What I become aware of is that the state pharmacy boards are telling the pharmacists, do not allow that to be dispensed. And that's coming from the governor. So you might have Trump saying, yeah, let's go with this. This is a great idea. We've got pharmaceutical companies donating drugs, and yet we can't get to it. People are dying. So we have to speak up. Don't you agree? So if somebody becomes ill, you yourself or somebody in your family, you need to speak up and you need to get that drug, because it is curing people. Dr. Zelenko from New York, he's healed 900 patients using hydroxychloroquine and zinc and Zithromax if they have the pneumonia. It works. But yet, like you said, the agenda is to push a vaccine because they make money.
It's to push a vaccine and to scare people so much. So just fast forward where we're right now to, let's say, October of 2020 as the flu season starts, right? October, November. What is going to happen then? Oh my God, a flu is coming, right? Now you've scared everyone. You've crashed the economy, right? Do you want this to occur again, right? So therefore, hey, you can't get your driver's license, Justin. Show me your vaccine card. You can't go into the gym. Show me your vaccine card. You can't take your daughter or child to a daycare center. Show me your vaccine card. And you know what? A number of people fall in line and say, oh, yeah, Justin, you're going to hurt the entire U.S. economy. You better get your vaccine card. That's where this is all about. They're creating this perfect marketing campaign, a viral marketing campaign, right? Where everyone becomes a part of this. Fear becomes a part of this viral marketing campaign. That's where this is headed. And remember, they're losing money. So imagine all 7.2 billion people in the world all have to pay about $1,000, okay? To get all the full dosage of whatever the vaccines will be. Well, that's $7 trillion a year. year over year over year over year. That's what you're looking at. So that's why it's really, really important people start look, the hydrochloroquinone and zinc, they're valuable, okay? But it's not a long-term solution because you will burn out your gut bacteria if you take Zithromax that long, okay? The reality is they're better than what Fauci wants to do, which is, I support it because it's counter to his view of mandated medicine. However, the real solution here is for people to recognize food is medicine and people to start taking responsibility for their lives and also look at who they're electing. Who are they electing? Yeah.
In addition, the Asian countries have been fairly successful. Japan, they barely tested anybody, and they've had excellent results. They didn't shut down their commerce or their economy. Taiwan, Singapore, and South Korea. But yet we have adopted here via Fauci a Chinese methodology of lockdown. So when I have been studying this is what I've discovered. We are doing exactly what China has done.
Exactly.
And they're trying to say that is successful, but it really isn't. It is killing. I know I'm hearing story after story of people that have lost their businesses or they're completely having to lay everybody off. And this is becoming a nightmare. So we need to, as a people here, we take our information that you've given us, go to our elected representatives at the state level. That's our state representatives, our governors, go to our congressmen and our senators and the White House and make our voice heard and say enough is enough.
Well, so I have a slight difference here, okay? My difference is this, and people should understand, we, I don't know if you know, January 6th, 13th, I've been involved in the health field for, as I mentioned, 40 years. So about 10 years, back in September, I think Jenny Smith been on the call. Jenny invited me to come speak at an event down in Florida on this vaccine issue. And what I came out of there was that there have been people involved in this quote-unquote anti-vaccine movement for 15, 17 years. And they haven't done anything. And I saw it, and I've been an activist for a long time, and I've been a student of political history, and I said, we need to build a bottoms-up movement, not begging to legislators. When I was in college, people would say, oh yeah, you should write to your congresswoman. A friend of mine worked in this congresswoman's office. They don't do anything. The letter comes in, they fill out a form letter and send it out, they count the number of letters. People need to understand these politicians are in it to get elected and elected and elected, okay? If we play the legislative game and don't build a broad-based mass movement, nothing is ever going to happen. And so when I got in, I said, look, we need to build a broad movement independent of these legislators. Many of the mothers and families took that to heart in New Jersey, and that's when we won. The existing people in this movement, including people like Robbie Kennedy, right? These other people, they've been involved for a long time. They've created institutions out of it, begging to legislators. In fact, Bobby Kennedy says he's against vaccines, yet he endorsed Hillary Clinton, okay, who's pro-vaccine. So what I'm saying is they want to contain movements. So I have a very different approach on this, and perhaps it's because I came from nothing and I'm more of a street fighter, okay? And I've gotten nothing. If you look at the history of this country, in the 1900s, we had 14 out of 40 people had infectious diseases, okay? 100,000. About 40 out of 100,000 people. It went down to 0.5 out of 100,000 in 50 years. How? Sanitation, refrigeration, vitamin A, nutrition, all those things in those 50 years, long before vaccines came. Well, how did that happen? And no one wants to educate people on this because the legislators will be out of power. It came from militant movements of the American working class in the late 1800s. People who were out there protesting and scared the living daylights out of people like Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He was an elitist. He didn't like everyday people. There was going to be a revolution in this country, and to stave that off, they threw people some bones, okay? But those bones were important bones. They were infrastructure. And that's how we brought down infectious disease. I keep repeating, the sanitation worker and the plumber did more for bringing down infectious disease than the doctor and the pharmacist. Now, how did that come? From militant mass movements. It wasn't begging to these legislators. So what's happened over the last 50, 60 years is we've moved activism to Bobby Kennedy's, a few people who'll go run their little nonprofits and beg money from other people. Oh, I'm working with that legislator for you. I'm a lobbyist. They do nothing. They do nothing. That is not, that is not activism. What we've created is a world of people begging for crumbs. So, but what I can tell you is when we told people to get out on the street and start protesting, build a mass bottoms-up movement, that's what scares these politicians. So I believe we need to build a mass movement, bottoms-up, disorganized and self-organized so it can't be controlled. Whenever you try to control stuff top-down, people can control these movements. So people should just look at all the movements that ever worked in the world. It was disorganized in some ways. Organized but disorganized, if that makes any sense. It wasn't like, and those in power always want to organize these movements. They always want to put some leader there. Gandhi in India, who misdirected the entire Indian people for 70 years, That's what they do. They never solve problems. They are or Bernie Sanders talking a good game, but what did he do? He gave all of his votes to Hillary Clinton. And the right does this too. They have their Tea Party people who used to be sort of a little more on the ground, and then they delivered all their votes to the GOP establishment. And that's what was profound about Trump. Trump went against the GOP establishment and against the Democratic establishment. And there are a lot of rhinos now who are MAGA hats.
Well, you've really educated us. I want to thank you. And I must tell you that this is an organization that they're pretty active.
Oh, good.
And prior to the sequestration of everybody, they were always out on the street. They do a lot of rallies, and they're talking to people, getting people registered to vote, trying to reach out to the churches, and we do reach out to other people. For instance, and I need to let the people know what occurred as a result of some efforts that we did in January. Rosemary Gibson, the author of China RX, when she came to town, we visited several people's offices, and one was Senator Rubio. And we met with J.R. Sanchez, and J.R. was very instrumental in getting Rosemary in front of some people in the Washington office and also in front of Marco Rubio directly. As a result, Rosemary gave testimony to a, what do they call that? He had, I don't know, I forget what the term is that they use, but they have, they're inquiring about the issues of China and the medicines. And so Rosemary gave testimony, and now Donald Trump is putting in an executive order to pull a lot of the manufacturing away from China, and right now at least about 400 different medications. So I give hats off to Marco Rubio, and I would encourage anybody listening to please pick up the phone and thank him. Call his office and say, thank you very much for doing that, because there is not one legislator who had the guts to do that. We met with people from Senator Scott's office, and nothing became of it. We met with people from Congressman Webster's office. Nothing happened. In fact, I couldn't even get her to call us back after multiple times of emails and phone calls. So hats off to Marco Rubio. He's done a lot more than what people know. And I just want to, make sure that our audience does know that. Please call him. So I don't think there's any more questions, and nobody else has jumped on board here. Stan, do you have something to add?
Not really. I just think that, being the head of the elections, we really have to do what the doctor's saying. We have to get out there. It's going to be a tough job after this. We need to ask for donations from the Villagers for Trump people. We need to advertise. We have to have billboards. We have to have articles in the newspaper. We have to really work on this. We have to get Donald Trump back into office, or everything that we've discussed this tonight is going to happen. China is going to take over the United States. I'm sorry to say that, but that's firmly what I believe.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the Harvard School of Public Health, which designs its health policy. You know, they changed their name to the T.F. Chan School of Public Health because they received $400 million from a Chinese wealthy financier who owns one of the biggest hedge funds there. So this country is being sold. You know, this is no different than when the British, to me, when I studied it, came to India, and the Indians just have textiles, massive manufacturing. And what happened was the British cut the thumbs off the textile manufacturers and moved all of it to Britain. You know, that was done much more forcibly, right? In the United States, it was done in a different way. We moved all of manufacturing to China. And then you basically use the kings in India, who were basically complete sellouts, to sell out their own people. Well, that's what's happened here. We've used the Gateses, we've used the Clintons, we've used the Zuckerbergs, okay, to sell out the American people to China. That's what's taking place. It's literally a selling off of U.S. assets. So
I think we need to wrap this up. We've
Yes.
gone way over time with our
Okay.
viewers. But again,
thank you,
Doctor,
everyone.
thank you very, very, very much
Sure.
for all the information that you've given us tonight.
great. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. God bless you.
Okay, be well. Take care.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank
Right.
you.
All right, Justin, sorry for the hiccups, but I think we
Did you
all
stop
right.
the stream?
Okay, thanks.
Did you stop the stream?
Yeah, let me stop the stream.